The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. My good friend Sarra Elgin and Steve Cordinger here. Hi, Sarra. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good, Lawrence. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Sarra.
You sound like you've got a cold.
I've always sounded like I've got a cold. I'm a rugby player who's
broken noses.
He's had his nose smashed every single week and it still hasn't worked itself out.
Very good, very good. Yes, very good. Very good. Busy weekend?
Busy weekend, yes. Fireworks and pumpkin soup in that order. The kids love the fireworks. They didn't like my pumpkin soup.
I'm very excited about our guest this week. He was last on the podcast a year ago, and since then he's gone on to become the most capped international rugby referee, having overseen 111 matches, including 27 Rugby World Cup games, more than anyone else in history, and at an unrivalled 5 tournaments, no less. He's recently announced his retirement, bowing out after presiding over this year's Rugby World Cup final between South Africa and New Zealand. Of course, it's Wayne Barnes. Hello, Wayne. I'm actually out of breath after reading that intro.
I was out of breath for you, but I am definitely not doing a Frankie, Lawrence. I will not be coming back out of retirement. I won't be going to New Zealand with Lee. That is it. The whistle has been chucked away. The boots have gone, and I'm looking forward to some more weekends at home.
Where do you keep all your whistles?
You know what? There's a little Tupperware box that I got given when I first started off, and my first season, there's a little place down in Gloucestershire where I started refereeing called Painswick RFC, beautiful little picturesque Cotswolds town. And after the match, they used to go into the away changing room if they'd won and plaster the change room with "Congratulations, you've just been defeated by Painswick" stickers. So I've got this little Tupperware box which they'd come into my change room and covered my little Tupperware box of "Congratulations, you've been beaten by Painswick RFC" all over there. And it's just sitting at my side of my bed at the moment because I still haven't really finished unpacking.
Is it quite a big box?
Oh no, tiny. It's only got 3 whistles and a couple of cards. And
do you not keep all your whistles?
Only got 3.
What? Like you've been in 111. What did I just read out? 111 matches, including 27 Rugby World Cup games.
Is this like Trigger's broom? Has it had many versions of it, or is it just really just 3 whistles?
Only just 3. And you just give them a bit of a wash now and again, get rid of all the phlegm and all the mucus that's in there.
I can only imagine the amount of phlegm after 111 international matches.
Well, that's a nice place to
good to see you.
Yeah. Listen, Wayne, we have got a lot of questions for you. First of all, congratulations on an incredible career. Sarra's already mentioned your achievements are unparalleled. When you reflect on your career now, I mean, first of all, what was the first game you ever refereed in professional rugby? And you didn't have a map thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be the world's most capped referee. I'm going to referee," and you probably haven't even had a chance to think about it really. But you must look back with enormous pride in what you've achieved.
I think, you have that conversation when you get to a World Cup final. Lots of people come out and say, "Oh, this must be your proudest moment. You must be chuffed about that." Yeah. I don't think it is. I think it's longevity, which I'm really proud of. You know, that I refereed my first Premiership match in 2003 down in Bath and Rotherham. As you lot were off at the World Cup with Spreaders and Whitey, that Chris White and Tony Spreadbury were refereeing. There was a bit of a space left. So they said, "Oh, some young lads coming up through." I was only 24 at the time refereeing Bath, and that was a decent Bath team at the time. You had front row of Duncan Bell, David Barnes, Lee Mears, David Flatman, those types of people. Some huge characters. But I think what I'm most proud of is those stats you've read out. So around 5 World Cups. They only take 12 referees to a World Cup. So you've got to be best 12 in the world for that period of time. But also like the last 8 years. 15. I was up for selection for the World Cup final. Obviously, Nigel, a good friend of all of ours, got selected. 19, I would have got it if England hadn't been there. And then, finally getting it. Just that period of 8 years, continuing to try and be the best as I could be. And there's hundreds of Premiership games in the meantime as well. And you've got to perform on those. People think, the Premiership mightn't mean as much to us referees, but every time you're on TV, every time people are holding you to account, and you don't want to upset these players, because these players, are going out there, and trying their best, and they're the guys and girls who you then see on the international kind of arena. So if you upset them doing Exeter versus Leicester or Saracens versus Northampton, you then turn up on the weekend at Scotland versus Wales, and they're like, "Well, you were crap last week, Barnsley, so we're having you better this week." So.
But they don't want to upset you either, though, do they? That's the thing.
Well,
yeah, a lot's been in the press, hasn't it? It's about the way that people react to certain decisions in a game, and I don't think people realise quite. I think in this day and age, they realise maybe the effect they have on players or calling someone out, but they feel like officials are kind of like fair game. Yeah. So how do you deal with those scars?
So I've got a group, well, I used to have a group until I bloody retired, of really close people around me who help me prepare and help me review a game, and you'll know a lot of them, some ex-referees, Chris White, Tony Spreadbury, Phil Keith-Roach from a scrummage point of view, an ex-international coach who helps me prepare and reviews a game, my wife who helps me kind of just review a game to see what I look like. Now, I can't please everyone. The one thing you can't do as a referee is please everyone. But what you can do is use people who understand the game inside out to get better. You listen to lots of people's opinions from within the game. So, of course, you'll take the reviews and the input from coaches and from other kind of selectors in the game. But you've got to stay really true to those people who help you prepare your game. And as soon as you start thinking, oh, well, I need to make sure that the public are happy and I need to make sure the commentators and the written journalists are happy, that's when you kind of, you get in a muddle in your head. So be really clear on what you're trying to achieve, have a trusted group around you, believe in what they say, they'll challenge you. And those 5 people who are around me challenge me more than anyone else.
And Barnsley, do you think that that's the template moving forward? Because you and your family have been subjected to horrific social media abuse. Is that something, do you want to then give referees now that kind of support? Is that something that you're going to continue to do? Because, that there's no place for that kind of behaviour in our game.
No.
And how would you like to see the issue tackled? Is enough being done to support referees at international level immediately after a game? Because, a few days later it blows over to the next game, but immediately after the game there appears to be an issue.
Yeah, I think there are three points. I think the first one is from a legislation point of view. I think there should be a way of the government looking at legislating to make sure we can identify these people. So when you on board with X or when you're on board with Facebook, you have to put something in there so we can come back and say, okay, this is a person who's abusing Lawrence Dallaglio. This is where they live. And we're going to go and prosecute you, because we all know, you can't just write this. We're going to come and chop your head off willy-nilly. If you want to do that, then you should face, criminal consequences. And so there should be some legislation around that. I think there's something from the governing body, whether that's the RFU or from World Rugby, to say, we will find out who you are. So, and to be fair to World Rugby, they use some forensics kind of social media specialists during this World Cup to identify people. So they are at the moment searching. That's
interesting.
Yeah, so finding people, not just people who've abused me, but we heard some, obviously some abuse that happened to Tom Curry.
Or inappropriate language or whatever it might
exactly
be, because
right.
It's just not, there's no place for it.
But when there's threats, when you cross a line to say, okay, we're actually going to, commit physical harm to you, that's when I think the governing body can say, right, okay, we've identified John, who lives in Twickenham. John, you're banned from ever buying tickets at Twickenham again. We're taking your season ticket off you again, and you're not allowed to be a member of any rugby club, because that will say we take this seriously. So I think there's that. And then I also think there's then the psychological support. The one thing that World Rugby's never done is really put in place, some kind of form of counselling or some form of psychological support. And you think about, we've been away for 8-9 weeks in Paris. I think having that member of the team is something which they'll now look at to say, not just me, because I think you do get used to it. You do get the scars, those scars on your back. You do it is a little bit of water off a duck's back. But when your family start to get it, that's the people who probably need the support, because they're not used to it, and they shouldn't be used to it, because they're not the ones who choose to be a ref or a player or a coach. So I think there's that idea of just making sure there's that kind of holistic support around officiating.
Yeah. Do you think officiating, it has got so much harder than it ever used to be? The pressure on you, the pressure on your assistants is completely different to what it used to be. It's not an easy question to answer, but the referee used to be the sole, arbitrator of all decisions made on the field, and that was it. And everyone was happy with that. Whether you got them right or wrong, you can debate afterwards. Now we've got this TMO situation. You've got, the bunker system. All the decisions that you were having to make. You made those decisions, but you could defer them to the TMO in certain instances, pre-agreed. Some people like Steve Hansen are saying, we've got a game that's governed by action replays all the time. I'm a big advocate that we shouldn't be showing tackles live in a stadium, because if you show plane crashes live in a stadium, people probably wouldn't get on aeroplanes all the time. So, I don't think it's a good way of marketing the game. Where does the balance lie? Do you think it's gone too far away from the referee and more on video replay, or do we need to sort of just get some sort of a bit of common sense? Because we don't want games to finish at 1 a.m. We want them to be over nice and quickly, but equally we want to get decisions right.
I've not been in a game that's finished at 1:30 a.m. What games are you watching?
Well, the ones that kick off at 10 o'clock at night. That's the one.
Okay, this is true.
I think the game needs to decide what it wants to be. And that's where I don't think we are at the moment. It was really interesting. I went to a conference 8-9 months ago with all the stakeholders of the game at Heathrow, and the stakeholders, the owners of the league, the chief execs of all the unions, and they said, we need this game to be more entertaining. We need to get more bums on seats. We need to get be able to sell the product to BBC, to TNT, to Sky. So we need the game to flow. Brilliant. We want the game to flow. So what that means is blowing your whistle less. So you then go to a meeting with the directors of rugby and the head coaches of international games, and they say, we want you to get every single decision right. And after a match, I've had times when I've had emails come through, part of the review assessment from one coach saying, here's 20 times you should have blown your whistle more. And then from the other coach picking up 20 other things. So an extra 40 decisions. Now the game doesn't know where it wants to be. So you either have to say to referees, let things go more, keep players on the pitch more, and that we're going to have a more free-flowing game. But then what you can't have is coaches coming out to the media saying, here's 7 examples of Wayne not blowing his whistle. So you either go down the route of being a bit laissez-faire, or you go down the route which coaches send us these emails of 20, 25 technicalities around someone entering the line out half a second too early, or grabbing a meter on the kick chase. And then you penalise everything. And then you get a game of 40 penalties and a ball in play of 25 or less minutes. So once a game decides that, referees can referee it. But at the moment, referees are being dragged from pillar to post saying, add flow to the game, but get everything. And it's not
I was just going to say, were you disappointed then that New Zealand have actually written to World Rugby about the performance of the officiating in the final? I mean, I don't understand what it's going to achieve now, because obviously the game's finished, you've retired, but that kind of response, is that disappointing for you?
So you raise that as a headline. You're never quite sure what that means. After every match, so I refereed New Zealand 3 times during the tournament, refereed them against Uruguay, refereed them against Ireland, and refereed them in the final.
Didn't have a problem with the first 2, did they?
Well, no. But they sent feedback after every game. So they would say, can you clarify these points? So writing to complain about World Rugby, as I've seen some of the headlines
slightly
this week,
misleading.
Can be very misleading. When they say, in the Telegraph this week, there was a headline saying Wayne Barnes retires because of the abuse that he's kind of had. That's not right. And that's not what I said. And it was totally misquoted. So I'm very sceptical about headlines. I'm sure, because, Ian Foster is very diligent, and with Joe next to him, they always go into detail after a match. And so after those other 2 matches, there was a lot of detail, asking questions of clarification. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've sent those into World Rugby. I haven't seen those yet.
Right.
Okay. Right.
I mean, if they'd kicked the penalty goals, they might have won the game, actually. And if they'd have played slightly more tactically and more astute in the first 20 minutes, they probably would have ended up not being 9 points to 3 down.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need Lawrence Dallaglio to phone him and sort him out.
Well, it's correct, isn't it?
Okay, Wayne. So you got an autobiography coming out on the 14th of November.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure it's a fascinating read, because obviously you've been in the middle of some amazing, amazing games and refereed some of the world's best players, and probably some of the most difficult, challenging, annoying. I don't know how you want to put it. So now that you don't have to face any of them on the field of play again, you're kind of free to spill the beans, right? Who would you say have been the top 5 hardest players to officiate?
Well, yeah, so it is quite embarrassing to have an autobiography out, like thinking that, there you are as a 15-year-old lad from the Forest of Dean, and eventually you're going to write a book. It does feel slightly, you get knots in your stomach even talking about it. But it was a lovely experience to be able to write it with a ghostwriter called Ben Durs, who's written James Haskell's autobiography, just written Danny's, and it's actually quite nice to have something in front of you that you can show the kids. Here's some of my experiences. In answer to your 5 hardest, I guess it depends what you mean by hardest. If you mean like really tough physical, like everyone knows I was petrified of Martin Johnson. I even said sorry to him once when I yellow carded him. I pulled out a yellow card and said, "I'm very sorry, sir." He replied, "That's the only effing decision you've got right all day." So you can understand, kind of that toughness. He had a really hard, like as in physically tough teammate called Julian White. I think he was perhaps one of the strongest blokes I've ever met. He once, in one of the games, Andrew Sheraton had the audacity to push him back at the scrum. Julian got up. Andrew gave him a bit of a shove, so Julian smacked him on the chin. And anyone who can put Andrew Sheridan on his backside is a tough bloke. So I sent off Julian for Andrew's protection, I suppose. So you get those hard men such as that. Players who are good over the ball, so really good at jackling, make your job harder because you have to be in the right position to see everything, every single kind of breakdown. So you go back historically, McCall, Pocock, Brousseau, put Curry in that as well. Those types of players, Stephen Armitage, those players who are constantly over the ball make it bloody hard to referee. And then I think hard, and I think where you're getting at is the ones who annoying. It's always when players don't trust you. So my job as a referee, I think, is to build a trusting environment. So when I go out on the pitch, they feel like I'm not getting the rub of the green against me. Barnes is actually being fair here. Yes, he's going to get some things wrong, but he's not trying to screw us over. So I try and build that relationship. You build it over months and years and decades, and you build that in the change room, you build that on the pitch. As soon as players don't trust you, you're in a difficult situation, because every decision you go, they'll shrug their shoulders, they'll wave their arms, and that then kind of goes into the crowd, that then goes into the rest of the players. And you get someone like I've said this before, like Johnny, like particularly over, not recently, but 3-4 years ago, didn't trust me. Quite clear he didn't trust me with some of my decision making. So that made it hard for him, it made it hard for me, and it made it hard for the rest of his teammates. So we sat down and had a chat about that, and I think that changed over the last couple of years, because Dan trusts me, Dan Bigger, but doesn't trust other referees. So my job when I'm with Dan on the pitch is a lot easier than some other referees. But also you get coaches who don't trust you. There was a period when Northampton didn't trust me at all. After I sent Dylan in the 2013 final, I'd go to Northampton and you'd literally see them bristle as I walked into the change room. So if a coach is bristling, you know what that's going to be said to the teams and the players. So those players or those coaches who fall out of trust with you, you've got to work hard to get that trust back, because it does need to all work in kind of synergy between you, coaches, and the players.
We've got so much to ask you. A couple of quick ones, quick fire questions. What was your favourite ground to referee at? Either at club level or international level?
I think everyone loves Millennium, or Principality as it's now called. Being a Gloucestershire boy, King's Own, pretty special. Marseille, though, is like a cauldron. If anyone was down there, I wasn't down there in this World Cup, but November last year, France versus South Africa. Amazing. Oh my goodness! It's noisy.
And have you had any embarrassing moments? I mean, other than the game going on for 18 minutes at the end, where you're trying to work out who to send off and who not to?
Well, that's right. You gave me 18. It was actually 100, when France versus Wales back in 2017, something like that. Yeah, went on for 100 minutes. That was slightly kind of embarrassing.
I mean, you're always a referee that if you got something wrong, you just say, guys, I've got that one wrong, let's just have a scrum, whatever. You'd have a bit of fun with it. But has there been anything embarrassing that's happened? No,
anytime you get run over, you always get embarrassed. Probably more embarrassing for Scott Brits when he tried to run over me and he was the one who fell on his backside. So I always remind him of that. Most embarrassing, coming up through the ranks in the junior, not the junior leagues, in the Championship, Moseley versus Worcester, when Worcester were trying to make their way through the ranks. I keep my red card in my right pocket, my yellow card in my left pocket, red right. I hadn't checked that before the match. And Richard Provo, who was a hooker for Moseley, a little nuggety hard man, decided to give Tony Window, who was a loose head for Worcester, a bit of a dig. I called over Provo. I was going to, draw a line in the stand. Went into my left pocket, picked it up, put it back in. Off he went with a shock and a disgust. After about 15 minutes, I said to one of the Moseley players, "Where's Provo? Is he coming back on?" They said, "You sent him off, you twat." looked in my pocket, had him the wrong way round.
Well, that's all for this week. Listen, despite obviously enjoying the company of my co-hosts, it's been a great pleasure to chat to Wayne Barnes, wasn't it? My thanks to him and to Sarra and Steve. We'll be back next week with more rugby chat. Until then, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Don't go watch football.